Okay, button clicked. I'm paranoid. I'm not sure if it's live. All right. No, we are live.
We're here. Yes.
There we go. Perfect. And I can hear myself. Let me mute that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. We can hear me. We can hear you.
Great. Awesome.
Right.
So this is kind of a long overdue stream. We've been wanting to talk about Shadowrun for quite a while, but the stars never quite aligned. And then enough people were mentioning it in Max's stream earlier that we figured, oh hell, what better time than now?
It is time to do this, to get at least like get some talks going. Get this over with. Like, it has to be discussed. You know,
Right.
Shadowrun, it's a colossus in the role-playing scene.
It is, and for good reason, for bad reason. A little from column A, a little from column B. Hey, Elf Hunter. Hey, K Dolo, Space Roadie, and all.
Welcome.
And a lot of that is just setting. There have been a lot of people over the history of the game that have said, well, just take the setting and run it in another thing. I have my issues with that. There's a lot of mechanics behind the setting. You can't exactly, because Shadowrun's so crunchy, if you rip the crunch out of it, it kind of isn't Shadowrun anymore. It's just another flavor of modern fantasy, right?
That's a good place to start, right? Before we go into the recommendations of play other game to achieve Shadowrun.
Right.
We should figure out what does Shadowrun achieve in the first place.
Right.
Now, of course, the Shadowrun, it has its legacy, similar to Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. This game is older than 10 years. It's been around. It has like 6 different iterations, maybe more. Like, there's also Shadowrun Anarchy. Now we have a 6th edition who hit the mainstream a couple years ago, I believe, at this point. And I myself played good, like, over the last 10 years at 5th edition, and we got a bunch of the books, and we keep all of the PDFs on hand just as a resources to help GM for players that wanna have like their own little wanna play with this spell and this ability and everything. Like, how much Shadowrun have you played? Like, if we gonna give the players, the viewers, what to expect of like our personal knowledge of the game.
I've played in I say campaigns, but 2 campaigns, one shot, and I've run it twice, which includes one shot and 1 short-lived campaign. So I'm definitely not the most experienced with the game, but I got to know the ins and outs of it pretty well, for better and worse.
Yeah, that's more than enough to cover like all the classics, which is shooting guns, slicing people up,
driving cars, hacking,
yeah, stealthing around, all of the good stuff. And Shadowrun, it has so many rules. What I think is so many rules are completely useless in the game that I love. The reputation system in the game is very evocative for me. This is amazing, and then it doesn't click in the game.
It's one of the best ideas that the game has to offer, and because it's only moving your dice pool like 1 or 2 in either direction, it just doesn't matter. Yes. Either you're not charismatic or you are charismatic, and that dice pool is going to be like 12 or 2. And so it's just not really going to matter if it's like, oh, I have bad reputation with this. But I have, as Space Roadie mentions, it's the greatest strengths to the game loop and gear porn. It's like I have I have plastic surgery and these pheromone producers and this, that, and the other. And so Yeah, I have -2, so I'm only rolling 10d6. It's like, oh, well, that still makes you like inhumanly charismatic. Well, damn. And you sort of run into this thing where the core mechanics of the game are actually quite simple. You roll a number of d6, you're looking for 5s and 6s, you don't want 1s, and you're trying to hit or beat a number, be it a fixed number or somebody else's dice pool. That's it.
Indeed.
But then every time you read something, it's like, oh no, you're not just trying to do that. Now you're trying to hack a thing and you need 3 marks on a thing. And you're like, what's a mark? And they're like, don't worry about that. A mark is just a thing and you need 3 of them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And you're scratching your head and you keep reading and you're like, wait, I thought this was like a fairly, straightforward skill-based system. And then the gear was all done beforehand, on your character sheet. And that's
Yes.
great. Now I just have the number that I know I need to roll. But now I'm trying to keep track of 50 other things. And at the end of it, you realize, wait a minute. Everyone in this room is dead. None of these rules mattered. Everyone was dead 3 pages ago, actually. So why are we even
Yeah, that's where my character comes in, which I have one staple character. The way we run Shadowruns in our German clique, so to say, like we have an in group that we play with, and you have to call, show up Saturday night, it's Shadowrun time. It's I don't know, something cringe like that. Hey boys, what if we play Shadowrun again? It's like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? So we come with the binder, slam it down. I got 10 characters. Which ones do I play? So it's a weird sorting process of, I got a run in mind. We need a hacker, we need a social, and we need some fighters. Magic is optional, so don't worry about bringing a magic guy or not. Like if you have to choose, you like lean towards hacker, social, and and that's how we organize a game, which is a stark contrast to setting up a D&D campaign of, hey, want to play D&D? Yeah, sure, let's continue the campaign with our 4 characters that all stick together.
Right. I think that's part of the problem. It's certainly part of the problem I had with it, because this was years ago before I ever found this YouTube group and changed the way I started running things. And when you set out to run Shadowrun as a campaign, it highlights all of the issues of setting out to run something as a campaign in general. But it also highlights some cool stuff, like continuing after a mission goes horribly wrong is actually really fun and compelling. It can be the group has a falling out, but everybody's down on their luck, and they're like, well, I've got nowhere else to go to, so I guess I'll stick around with these fuck-ups and try to make the next mission work. I gotta make ends meet. This penthouse isn't paying for itself. And so there's a lot of cool stuff like that. I'll say hi to people who are showing up in the comments.
Let's go through the list here.
Yeah, Crispy's here, Max is here, Nicholas is here, great. And Elf Hunter's here. I don't know if I said hi already, Elf Hunter. 3rd, 4th, 5th in that order, fight me. I can't speak on 3rd edition. I've only played 4th and 5th and read through 6th. So I will try to be avoiding the edition wars and be talking about the elephant in the room, that being 5th and 6th and 4th, I suppose.
It's weird. Yeah, Crispy Bob, he says in chat, right? They got the 6th edition books, and he wonders if he will ever financially recover from that terrible decision. It's like, wait, I didn't even know there are multiple books of 6th edition. That's because the way it was pitched to me, right? Because what if Shadowrun, but with less clunk? And that's 6th edition. And then I watched exactly one video of like after campaign talk with on YouTube, and they talked about like how it felt to run 6th edition. And it basically boils down to a lot of the ways you roll dice were completely non-diegetic. Of like the
Yeah.
way you use edge for everything, and that weapons do the same amounts of damage. It's like
Mhm.
completely disconnected. It's the opposite in 5th edition
Mhm.
of how you shoot guns. It's incredibly mechanical.
Yeah.
You need your attributes. If you don't have attributes, you have uh the cyberware installed that give you the
Mhm.
attributes, right? And you have
Yep.
you learn the skill that improves.
Mhm.
Oh, you're rank 1. Like, you've shot a gun before. Congratulations, you're not a dumbass.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And
and that's to answer Max's question, are players in Shadowrun more inclined to take the L once in a while? Yes, because one of the things I really love about Shadowrun, at least 4th and 5th edition,
yeah,
is that you're very good at what you're supposed to be good at, and you're total crap at what you're not supposed to be good at. If somebody who's not
yes,
good at driving has to drive a car, brace for impact. Things are gonna go terribly wrong unless
right.
it's just a simple drive down the street.
Exactly. And that's what I love. I always drive my bike, my car anywhere I go because I'm shit. I went through driving school. I got myself a license so that the police doesn't stop me because I don't signal out the license. And then they check out like, oh, he has a gun installed into his arm. This guy is
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah. Or when you fail at hacking something, it almost
Yeah,
always sets off alarms. It always makes the situation, you don't merely not progress, you've made the situation worse, which I think is great because it means that stuff happens. Almost
in
never in
yes,
Shadowrun do you run into the problem of guys getting stuck at a door and then, oh, you failed your lockpick, and now we just haven't progressed the situation. All you've done is you
right.
failed. And now we're still stuck at the door. No, in Shadowrun, it's more like, well, you failed to lockpick the door, and now the door is shocking you and alerting the police, and you have 30 seconds to comply. And so now it's like, oh shit, now things are happening.
Yeah. Now it's a good and a bad thing. I want to get into all of that, but I feel like we have to set the floor a bit more. I put it in the title, crunchy or clunky, right?
Mm,
Which one is it for Shadowrun? So let's define crunch and clunk like we talked about it in the Mr. Max video. Like
right.
Mr. Max talked about it like through chat. Let's give a small bit of breakdown for prosperity for later viewers.
Mm. So I sort of made this distinction where crunch is necessary mechanical additions to get more verisimilitude, immersion, whatever word you want to use to describe this thing, right? Because on one end of the thing, you can have a super light system, like a one-page RPG, which is just, this is your combat skill. And it's like, okay, so how many interesting characters can I make with that? Because every character I make that's good at combat is going to be good at fighting in melee, is going to be good at fighting with rifles and grenades and, all of it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say you need more crunch than that, for me at least, and your mileage may vary. Obviously, this is a subjective thing. But um, there becomes a critical mass where there gets to be, it turns into being clunky. Where, like we mentioned with the, not reactions, why am I, relationships,
Yes.
and like contact, where that's something that's really cool. It's a good idea, it's a good mechanic, but it just ends up being clunky because it's not compared against the other numbers in the, and it just feels very underdesigned. It feels like they had 5 different designers in places that where they had one guy that has this cool hacking minigame and he wanted to work on that. And then you have a group of people that are working on the core mechanic and they wanted to work on that. And they both finished what they were working on and then they talked to each other right before the book got released. And they're like, oh, geez, now we need to make this work. Rather than
Right.
a
Oh,
good,
yes.
crunchy game where everything is being built from the ground up out of those core mechanics.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's
Space already mentions initiative. I shudder. Yeah, that's.
Okay, just to give an example of how initiative works. Imagine you're playing D&D and you roll your D20 plus 5 for initiative. Like, it's something really low, really simple, and you go down the list. Now, the comparison would be, okay, now you play Shadowrun, roll initiative, but if you have the cyberware installed, you roll 1d20 plus 15, you know. you have a exponentially higher boost. Now it uses different dice. What was it, like a d6, 2d6, 3d6, 4d6? Is how it works. So there's a drug, a street drug. You take the street drug. Now you roll 2d6 for your initiative instead of 1d6. And then you have the cyberware, you roll 3d6. And what ends up happening is, if you're playing normal guy social, you don't have much money, you don't have like all of the tools, then you have one turn. And the cybered up guy pumped full of drugs with a spell on himself gets 3 turns.
Yeah, because for every, if you can subtract 10 and still have a positive number from your initiative, then you get another turn.
Yes.
And this really exacerbates an issue that you see in a lot of games anyways, where you have turnflation, where one or a couple of players are doing 50% of the talking. Well, if they have, the game is now allowing them to do that in this case.
Yes.
And I think it's a mechanical way to represent speed that ends up being a very clunky way to represent speed, because you're not doing more with less, you're doing more with more, so to speak, right? It doesn't just give you you're faster, so you go first. It's, you're faster, so you go first, and then you go again, and then you go again.
And also, very weirdly, you have more options the more initiative you have, because all of the extra rules are like, hey, yeah, you can do stuff like parry somebody or dodge an attack and take a -5 onto your initiative. You like pay in initiative almost to get something extra out of it. Now you have to keep track of all of these extra rules on how to do combat.
Now you have to keep track of where your initiative now is, because it permanently stays lower because you spend it and you don't get it back.
Exactly.
This could be an issue with the concept of initiative in general, and that it's more suited to video games where this stuff is all automated and in the background.
Yes.
And it's one of the reasons I like automated character sheets and stuff like that, like for Shadowrun. Like Chummer is really good for keeping track of ammo and reloads, because you just click the little button and Space Raiders getting PTSD flashbacks.
Oh my god. Please, sir, I just want my turn. No, I shoot him again.
Yeah.
I have 3 more turns left in the tank.
And then let's get into that. When you shoot someone, you're not merely shooting someone. You shoot someone, and then they roll to dodge out of the way. And then if they don't roll to dodge out of the way, then they roll armor soak. And then if they don't succeed at their armor soak, then you get to do damage. And thank God you don't roll damage. Thank God damage is at least just a flat number. So, if your Street Sam has high initiative, and they're firing, full auto, and God forbid they're not using armor piercing, so they don't just get to hand wave I go through their armor. Oh boy, I mean, let's roll 12d6 for machine pistols, and then 12d6 for machine pistols, and then 12d6 for machine pistols, and we're a third of the way through their turn. And but they're very clever about this. It's just a mechanic I don't see anybody using. And that's the buying hits system. They go, well, this guy's only got a three dice in his dodge. You're rolling 12d6. Well, for every 4 dice, you can just take a hit. So, if you got 12, they're basically telling you give this player an automatic success. We don't need to go through this. You're just blasting a machine pistol at some, goons that have maybe a 5% chance of dodging out of the way. Whoa! No, that just do it. You just hit them.
Yeah, that would be like at a... Well, it doesn't have much to do with 3D or 4D. That would be a DM caveat of saying, you know what? Like, this guy is a goon. He doesn't have a name. Like, we didn't even mention his name yet. If you shoot your gun at him, he's blasting over, falling to the floor. You know, he might be alive if the players care to stick around. He might just be dead. That's up to the game master. Maybe he survives the bullet wounds, like goes to the hospital and comes back to get you in 2 sessions. But we can just move on from that. Like, oh, guy in the street, I'm blaming him. I do the gangster, rat-tat-tat-tat, and he's on the floor, and we move on. No need to go into initiative, roll initiative, do
right, exactly. And Kadolo, you're right. That's not exactly how full auto works. I'm just giving a loose example of it because full auto, you reduce their dodge chance. And then
Kadolo pushing up his glasses. Well, actually,
really, what you're doing is you're calculating. I should have mentioned. Now you're calculating recoil, and you're looking at your strength to see if you can handle this amount. So it becomes a problem in that way. My example is more for repeated single shots, which I always think of as full auto. And
recoil.
And that's
crunchy or clunky, right?
I will adjust this by saying I like the concept of limit, where you can be more accurate than your gun is. For example, so you have a 12.
Roddy. He forgot about the recoil rules. He's reeling right now.
Yeah. So this is why I'd say Shadowrun is both, because limits are a good idea. It's a neat idea. It's one of the unique things about Shadowrun 5th edition that I really like. Like, yeah, you have a crappy pistol that has a limit of, 5, but you're an 8 with pistol. Now you get to roleplay, your guy who's really skilled is like, God, this thing keeps fucking jamming on me. It's not it's not me, it's the pistol. It's just not shooting where I'm aiming at. That's a really cool thing. What
that
I
leads
don't
into
see
the gun porn, right? Like, oh my god, we get to have all of this equipment, and I cyber it up, and I tweak it.
Right, exactly. I don't see why recoil needed to be a different mechanic than limit. That one just seems like it just seems like limits with extra steps, like, because basically all recoil could have been was adjust the limit down unless your strength is this. So, for example, if full auto with this machine gun is reduces the limit by 3, but if you have strength 3, then it cancels each other out or whatever. It could have just been that, and then it's something you have pre-written on the machine gun thing on your character sheet instead of what it actually is. Yeah, Shadowrun PTSD or support group. Kadolo says, here's the problem. I thought I was going to enjoy Cyberpunk Red because everything was dumbed down, but it's way too dumbed down to the point where cover doesn't matter. When that crunch is gone, things start to make less sense. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of great in Shadowrun that has acknowledged that, yeah, that crunch does matter. It changes these cool things. It allows for these cool John Wick style gun porn scenes and Ghost in the Shell scenes. And then it kind of starts falling apart if you use all of the rules. It feels like the core mechanics, the core book, had a lot of stuff that should have been in Splat books, but was instead just included in the main rule book. And then there's stuff that's like, it becomes clunky because it's over-designed, but under-edited and unfinished, right? You have like, oh god, the Technomancer. No one understands how that works.
I'm
just
playing a Technomancer sometimes. I got a Technomancer built and I played it a few times. He's a headache. He's like, what if you're a hacker, but you work like a wizard,
Yeah, and then they just say that like it's self-explanatory. It's like, oh, they summon sprites and they work like programs. Anyways, moving on. It's like, wait, but Okay,
but the way
fine.
like you summon sprites and they show up in the matrix, so hackers see the sprites, so they're like, what the fuck is this weird shit code floating around doing whatever the fuck it wants to? Like, holy shit, we have a technomancer here. I can sell him for like $10,000 to the government, to some, to the mega corp.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Space
I
Birdie asked a
disallow
good question.
technomancers.
Yeah.
If as a game master you just remove yourself a headache, because that's what Shadowrun is, right? Every like archetype class, in this case, it's more like you build into the archetype by like buying whatever. Let's see, I think like whatever skill you have. Like I'm not quite sure how it was defined, but yeah, it's like a talent. You have the magical talents, so you can be a wizard. You have the magic attributes that you can level
It's one of
up.
the first things you decide. Either you are or aren't magically gifted.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I think that's where the crunch can be really good, is when you've done it all beforehand. And Shadowrun's actually pretty good at that, is once you have everything on the character sheet, well, now I'm just rolling D6 pools. Great, everything just uses D6 pools. It just becomes a problem when they try to get cute with things, and you get rules like chunky salsa, and you get things where it's like, I throw a grenade into this room, and if you actually start doing the math, you're like, wait a minute, this is a 5-step process, and everyone in this room is dead on step 2. So what's the purpose of this 5-step process? It's like they made it becomes clunky when you've made a whole rule set for an edge case.
Shadowrun live. Okay.
That's what it feels like a lot of things in Shadowrun are, is a whole... Yeah, we're just doing a Discord call, Max.
All right.
And
we are using Discord.
Go ahead.
Basic Discord is what we are using here.
But yeah, Space Ready said, what's stopping you from just role-playing those kinds of scenes? Hopefully nothing. Hopefully nothing. And that's kind of my argument in if I was going to run Shadowrun again, is I would just cut all of these little subsystems, shave it down where it's like, and people have already done this with like the hacking system. Get rid of it being a mini game. There's no real purpose to it being a mini game. It just, all it ends up doing is the same thing that happens in combat with your Agi Street Sam happens when something's hacking. Well, now nobody else gets their turn because this guy, he can't just do his hacking thing, with a few rolls. He has to do the same roll 3 times to get what's added by requiring the 3 mark system in Shadowrun 5th edition. Who would have fun if I told you in any game that has like a security... I'm louder. Let me turn myself down real quick.
Wait, hold on. I'm doing it on my end, so
okay.
I turned you down
let's not
a little
both
bit.
Adjust. Yep.
Yeah, I will adjust on the fly. Jack can let us know if it's better now than before.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I'll keep talking real quick. Yeah. But what would it add to any given game if you're trying to lockpick, and instead of just better, all right, awesome, but instead of just one check, the GM now goes, okay, you've successfully set the first pin in the tumbler. Now I need you to roll again to set the next. It's like, come on, man. Do we need to be that granular? The other players are face palming over here. And we've added an additional chance for them to fail. And then we're back to... And I mentioned failure is interesting in Shadowrun, but it often becomes a downhill sort of out of control thing. So
yes.
I don't think you need to introduce additional means for failure. Also, it just... nothing else in the game really works like that. It's just one of those rules where it leaves you scratching your head, where it's like, why did they design this one part like this when you had it all fine? I don't get it.
The best part of Shadowrun is that I think, like, I opened the book and I know, all right, they're mechanical locks, then they're like pad key locks, Then you have like they have passwords. So you now have different options to hack something, which brings a bit of variety. A lot of games are, hey, break and enter. Recover target or recover your interest. This a lot of them are basically that. I'm trying to think what else is there, like magical artifact. Look out for that, and many often you have a choice, or it's like encouraged to give a choice to help the man or help the community. Of, do you want more karma or do you want more cash? Because the megacorps, well, they do have cash, and even if it's just a subsidiary of a subsidiary, because you don't live in Seattle, you live in where we play in Hamburg, some fucking German ADL little town that's like still international enough to have representations, but the heat is not as big.
Max says, I think the granular lockpick can be interesting if you're trying to lockpick during an action scene.
Yes.
Yeah, in theory. But I'll mention two things. Shadowrun's a lot about the setup and ideally avoiding the action scene. Hopefully your street samurai is knocking people, hitting people in the back of the head. Because once you get into firefights are ugly and dirty, and usually you will eventually lose them if they go on for too long.
That's a cool thing and a problem, because you have the cool thing of the escalation spiral, like, oh my god, everything's spiraling out of control. But when playing Shadowrun, what ends up happening, and you can tell me if you saw that reflected in your groups, what my groups do, right? And no matter if I'm a player or if I'm a game master, the players know, fuck, everything spirals out of control so fast, so they spend all of this time talking out of character to each other what the plan should be. So they all turn to the smartest player at the table to take the lead and do the thinking for everybody else. It's because they're trying to solve this puzzle. So it's almost like a D&D puzzle, right? Like, we are using our brains to solve an in-game problem, when actually we should be using our character's approach to things. I play a meathead street Sam Stumpfzahn. He's an orc. He's low educated. He doesn't even have his own ID. He got into it because his arm got fucking crushed at work, like, as he's doing, like, what's it called, like black work, working on construction sites, like fixing stuff. Arm got crushed, like, they're not paying anything. So he got into the mafia to get an arm replacement. They said, look, this is gonna cost you, you're indebted to us. But we will help you pay the debt back by installing a shotgun as well, Like the character creation. Now, I'm a guy with a shotgun in my arm, and that's the whole
shit. I was just about to say, the whole, this is where the crunch of Shadowrun really shines, is that you don't have to write a big, 50-page character backstory to get everything that you just mentioned. The game tells you it through the perks that you choose, through the equipment that you're buying and stuff. You're building the story as you're building the character.
Yeah,
you can
what
start
do you
with
have
just
access to, and what do you not pick?
Yeah.
Like,
and
the absence of an item speaks volumes about your character.
And you can start from either end, too. You can start from, I want this guy to be in debt to the mafia, and then think, well, why is he in debt to the mafia? Or you can start with, I want this guy to have a cool shotgun arm, and it'll be like, wait, why would he have that?
I'm playing Mega Man, but in Cyberpunk,
Yeah. Either end, you can start to get the rest. But the other end of it, other than just, yes, players tend to play very timidly, because I do agree, and I don't remember how much of it was out of character. Probably a lot, since this was before I found this group and even started paying attention to it. And once you start paying attention to it, you see it everywhere.
You see it everywhere.
Right?
Like a virus.
It happened a lot after I had a player. They, like, the first combat I ran, they got their, like, face blown off. And they had to totally abandon the abandon the scene, drag him off. He's barely alive at like one condition box or something. I can't remember what it was. But they're dragging him off. They're getting him like a prosthetic jaw put in, and they're like, "Man, it's gonna be really hard. You're not gonna be stealthy exactly. Everybody's gonna know who you are. We can't take you to any good doctors because we fucked up our first mission. We have no money. This is a problem." And that immediately sets the tone for, all right, we're going to sit back and let the Decker do everything until he sets off an alarm. Which means the Decker is just the hacker, if you aren't familiar with Shadowrun parlance there in the chat, is just sitting here doing...
keyboard out of the backpack and starts typing away.
And as long as he
USB
keeps...
stick into the wall, something like that.
And eventually what happens is one of the other players will get bored and do something stupid, and it becomes interesting, but at the cost of the players usually failing whatever it was they were trying to do.
That makes it a bad... It makes it a bad system because it encourages a style of play to be overly cautious and not take any risks. Because every time you take risks, you get punished. So you get taught to be a passive player, a cautious player, a player that asks Mother May I questions. It's baked into the system. It's not the fault of the game master because he reads the rules like, okay, if I want to be a good game master of Shadowrun, I should punish you every time you fail, like severely, because everybody is more powerful than you, has more resources than you, more men working for them than you have, more connections. It's just a question of, did you piss off the wrong people or not? You know?
Yeah. And
do you want to look over some comments or rep this point?
Yeah, because we're talking about the idea of extended extended roles for successes, which brings it back to like the multiple hits in the Matrix. The problem comes when the world of Shadowrun is already constructed so that let me paint a picture. Let's say that you've got one gate guard, you've got a security camera, and the door itself is electronically locked. That guard, if he's cybered, or even if he's not, he probably just has a smart pistol. Here's already 3 things that the Decker has an option to hack, right? So the only thing, again, you're time limited, right? So maybe every time that the Decker does one thing, this guard starts going on his rounds and is more likely to see the guys, hanging out in their weird van, and is like, more likely to start asking questions, things like that. Now you multiply this by 3 because they need 3 hits on the gun, they need 3 hits on his cyber eyes, they need 3 hits on the camera, they need 3 hits on the door itself.
Yeah, with the mark system, right?
Yeah, with the mark system, right? Whereas instead, you've already got this idea of you've got a limited amount of time because the longer you sit around in your van that's out of place, the more likely the guards are going to start asking questions. Or yeah, exactly, Max. Your buddies are not. If your buddies are covering for you well, then maybe he does have the time to hack everything, and then you go from person to person, right? But when you stretch this scene out from, all right, I've got the cameras. Guys, if you can just buy me a little more time, I think I can get his gun too, and then you can knock him out, and we can do this quietly. Instead, it's, all right, guys, I'm 1/3 of the way through getting the camera.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I am now 2/3 of the way. It's like, how much can you do small talk with the guard as a face where you're going, yeah, good weather tonight, isn't it? And you're doing that for 9 rounds. It's
Our tables, we ignore marks completely. They're never brought up until they're like, oh, here there's like this interesting interaction that might be of use for the hacker. So then he wants to maybe spend marks. I think it was mostly me because I'm like, hey guys, I'm playing a hacker this time. Let me use this mark system. It's like, wait, why does everything take so long? It's so boring.
Exactly, yeah.
And as soon as you fail, you like get targeted immediately and can basically die, get fried in a moment's notice, you know? Like,
Yeah.
At one moment you were hacking in peace, like getting in, then you did one bad roll, you got found out, and they target you and kick you out and fry your brain. Now you're like bleeding out of your nose, taking shock damage, half hit points. Like, oh my god. And the alarm is triggering and people are like rushing out with guns in their hands. Like, okay, well, this went sideways. And that's been my experience with hacking so often. It's like, not just like roll to fail. It's you can roll 12 different times. You go from the door into the building, turning off the cameras, gaining access to the cameras, creating a whole grid for your team. And then you see the connection to the server. So you go into that and you grab the data and, but you failed the roll by grabbing the data. You succeeded all the other ones, but you failed here. Now everything is ruined already and you get kicked out. It's like,
and it was all for naught. Yeah.
It was all for naught. Like, we've been sitting here for 45 minutes and now it's all wasted. And everybody sits there. That's what they think.
And then the Decker turns to the rest of you and goes, hey guys, we gotta go. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
All we've been doing is sitting here. What are you talking about? Yeah. And yes, K-Dolo, that's true. You only have to hit or get 3 marks on one person to get their personal cyberware network. The problem is, then you have the network hierarchy where people can be brought into other people's networks, and you're thinking about like, oh, this cyberdeck can handle X many devices. So this guy's gun isn't actually on his personal network. Only his eyes are on his personal network. His gun is under the Renroku Tsurugi at the IT guys department. So you need to hit 3. And
Try to keep track of that while you're trying to roleplay at the table.
Right. And it's just... you made it complicated and interesting enough at character creation. And we haven't even talked about programs. Like,
we haven't even talked about Wi-Fi.
Programs or Wi-Fi or noise or... it's too into the weeds. Exactly, K-Dolo. It's just... that is too much for one character to do, right? Compared to Magic, which is just you do magic stuff and you can take on burn. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much just how the system works.
It's like, okay. Cool. Like the basic Magic, you roll a skill check, which you do for everything else as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you succeed the skill check, you set a target, right? Like I'm doing a level 3, I don't know, Firebolt. What magic is there? Like you can fling like a projectile with magic and do physical damage. You can also do one to attack a mage, like do like mental damage, something like that. And you set a target like, okay, I'm not gonna put all the power into this one because he's a mook. I cast at level 2. But then the feedback happens, so you need to absorb the level 2 spell you've just tried to summon up and cast. So if you cast low spells, you can handle it regularly. Sometimes you mess up, you take some damage, you stop bleeding out of your nose.
Yeah.
And but if you want, you get chased down, but like the whole the police patrol force, like 5 guys with guns on a big truck chasing you down with red and blue lights. And you're like, man, I need to summon up this fucking ice wall to block across the highway and cast like my level 5 ice spell or something to enable that. And you might just get fucking knocked out while you're driving away with the other ones, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to pay at this point.
Yeah. And I think Magic's really well done in it. I think because
that's where
exactly
Cyberpunk
that,
is better. Cyberpunk is trash in a different way, says Space Roadie.
There it's Max asks if there's a Cyberpunk themed game that's well designed. Cities Without Number, Hunter Seeker are 2 that have been mentioned. I've never heard of Hunter Seeker, so I'll have to check it out. Kiddo mentions lethal versus stun damage is so stupid. I will have to rack my brain on the differences, but if I remember correctly, stun damage is a lot easier to rack up because of the way armor soak works.
Yes, that's a problem. The way I'm not 100% sure, but the way it ends up playing out, right? If you have enough armor, you don't take normal damage. It turns the normal damage into stun damage.
Yeah.
So you build up your troll fighter. That's what I am.
Yeah.
I'm a troll street Sam. I got 42 out of the ass. I got my natural toughness. I got all of the armor. You take a hit, right? Like you got all of the talents, the traits. Like I'm School of Hard Knocks. You know, I've been there in the streets. You have 15 hit points, which is like insane. Usually you have like 9 or 10. The buff ones, a troll, he can get 15, 16, no problem. And then it turns into stun damage, which goes to his mental, which every troll is pretty bad at taking anything that's a mental challenge. And you fall over, not unconscious. Like, and you just sit there and be like, why did I build this tough guy? He just gets knocked over anyways because of the way the rules work.
The guard with the taser just walked up to me and that was that. But if he had tried to shoot me, then like I may have been okay. It's like, on what? And so that's an issue where the crunch is not adding to the verisimilitude, it's removing from it. It's no longer believable, right?
The crunch becomes clunky.
Right, exactly. And it's not like it's not like body armor is like caliber gated or something where it's like, oh yeah, if you get hit by like a 50 cal, this futuristic body armor it's enough to stop you from dying, but you're still, cracking ribs and stuff. No, if you get like sprayed full of, 9mm bullets, then all of a sudden you're knocked unconscious, and it's like, well, hang on. That's not how that works. So like you'll be bruised, but it's not gonna knock you out. What is likewise with like dodging attacks from someone shooting at you.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe if you have like hyper enhanced reflexes, sure, that's possible, but it becomes a little goofy when you're like dodge rolling out of the way of a bullet that's traveling 2,000 feet per second. And
it's usually okay because high dodge rolls are only possible if you're incredibly like naturally gifted, like you put all of your points in agility, or you got the cyberware installed, or you got some drugs pumping through you, like a lot of the what are they called, the adepts. If you're more of a martial magic user, an adept, he can buff his reactions to dodge shots much easier. So then it's like, the magical and the cyberware is helping you dodge the bullets, which is cool. If it's just like Rod Rocks, then it's then you imagine the scene of Neo where he dodges the bullet tail.
Right.
Which it can be goofy. I think, don't you think like that's depending on how the shot is being done? Because most of the time I imagine you turn the corner, you point a gun, take a shot, and then you have like all this recoil happening, like it's spraying around, it's destroying everything. Who knows that you're actually hitting the guy? Like I know you're a gun nut. I don't shoot guns, but you're American. So is that like destroying your verisimilitude of the world? This guy shot gun, but I'm still alive. Forcing you to talk while you're chewing. I'm so evil.
It does happen. To give you a random off-the-cuff statistic, cops have about a 10% hit rate on a moving suspect. So these are people who presumably have some training with firearms. And they're actually quite bad at hitting a moving target. And a lot of that is because the adrenaline starts pumping, and when you're at the gun range and you're going bang, bang, bang,
yeah, you calm.
Yeah, you can hit. Great, fantastic. But if somebody suddenly turns the corner and they've got a knife and you weren't prepared for it, and you just have to get bang, 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 bang. Yeah, maybe one of those actually hit the guy. But that's because you're in a sucky situation. It's not because the other guy is dodging out of the way.
Yes.
I don't think you need both, right? I think you would only need something like when Kadolo says, in Cyberpunk, your reflexes have to be 8+ to be able to dodge bullets. And there's a lot of situations where you're still making the dodge roll, but all you're doing really is you're looking and you're going, oh, wait a minute, it's physically impossible for me to do this. But the step is still there. So it's just adding to that mental bandwidth, like you mentioned earlier, where
Yeah.
you're going, oh, let me check to see if I can. Or instead, you could just say, don't even bother doing this step unless you have, like you mentioned, the adept powers or the cyber enhanced
You
or
have some
you're on
cyberware
drugs or
going.
something like that.
You
Right,
jammed in
right.
some drugs.
Um,
Your combat cocktail stim pack.
mhm.
Which is like how I define like the 3 different ways
Yeah.
to get to gain superpowers. This is why you are a Shadowrunner
Yeah, right.
and not
Right.
just some ganger on
Not
the
some wage
streets.
slave, yeah, or
Yeah, a wage
your
slave.
skills aren't exactly useful behind a desk. Yeah.
You have a particular
Reaction,
set of tools designed to hunt you down, to find you, and to kill you. Right,
Max
I
says,
see a bunch of comments here. What did
yeah,
you say?
yeah. Max says people always want to make gunshots super deadly, but if I had to choose between being shot by a handgun or hit in the face by an axe, I think my chances of survival would be better for the former. Yeah, Shadow, you would probably enjoy that about Shadowrun. Melee is quite deadly. If
Melee
you
is awesome.
get up close and personal to somebody with a monofilament sword, that's pretty much good night. They're oh God, my dog's going crazy. Um, oh, she's in a very playful mood. Found a ball.
All right, great.
uh,
but he's talking about Shadowrun again. Yay!
Yeah. Okay, she's leaving. Though there is something to be said about that because if you get hit in the head with an axe, you're probably going to get hit in the head with an axe again because you're already right there. Whereas if you get shot with a pistol, well, you're out of range. There's a decent chance that it's only a few feet to get into cover, and then that's a survivable interaction.
Yeah.
Who knows? I think in general, though, yeah, you
That's a
should
very
have
similar to like melee weapons
right,
hurt a lot, and it does depend like what weapon
right.
you're using, but armor pretty much works the same way still.
Yeah.
You have the armor number.
Mhm.
Now, I don't remember about like targeting his arm or his leg or his head.
Oh, I
because-
don't remember that either. I think that's from a splat book, isn't it?
Yeah, usually
I-
we ignore those, and if we do use it, then they often say like, okay, that's like -10 dice for you to roll,
Mhm.
which is like,
Right.
okay, now why are you even rolling? Because the guy's still dodging, so instead of getting like 6
Right.
successes, you have 1 or 2 successes.
Yeah,
And
you
he's
were never
rolling to
going to hit the guy,
dodges
you know.
easily, and you feel like, oh, I just wasted my
So-
turn trying to do something cool, attacking
It-
his weapon or his head, and instead you fail. So it's a waste of time.
It exists just to beat up characters that you could already beat up easily,
Yes,
which
exactly.
is confusing. And that's where
It's a high
you
risk,
get into the
high
clunk.
reward move.
You get into the clunk side of things, where
Shit, okay.
trying to word this in my head before I just say it.
Shatsy,
You get into the
oh,
clunk side of
Shatsy in
things
the
where
chat.
you have an idea that's good on paper, right? Oh,
Okay,
you can
then
be
you
able
have
to
the
target,
knowledge, Shatsy.
lots of games have this. You can call your shots, you can try to target a different area of the body, but it's harder to do than just swinging and hoping you hit something. Put your commentary about that in the comments. But
See,
if
I was
the
saying some
balance
stuff.
is- yeah.
I was saying some stuff to my wife next to me, but I muted in the Discord, but I did not mute in OBS, so it's gonna be like double. Well, it's German, so that's still awkward.
When you when you first think of this mechanic, it sounds like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. But when the numbers are so far off, such as your contacts only bringing you,
Yes.
1 or 2 dice on a 12 dice pool, but this bringing you 10 dice down on a 12 dice pool, then it's like, well, hang on.
Yeah.
We could have effectively achieved the same thing by saying this is impossible and this is an auto success, or this is negligible or this gives you some dice. Which is it? And I think a lot of the problem stems from the way that the game does so little to tell you how to run it that you have to come up with these like shorthands and okay, that doesn't really make sense, but you have to fail through the system first before you realize what the problems are. Where you go,
Yeah,
oh, I see. Wait, why didn't they design it that way? I feel like if they played the game once, they would have figured this out and then designed it differently.
if
I
only
don't know.
if only
You know.
somebody like gave a shit, but which is like so often the problem with Shadowrun, right? Like we had a comment very early. Space Roddy mentioned he heard that the German rules are much better, which is correct. The
Interesting.
playing
I've heard that, and
yeah, that is true. So a few different things. The formatting, the Germans like improved the formatting of the games, but also because we can get the English version first. They see a bunch of the problem areas of, man, this item is completely broken, it is stupid, it doesn't align with what we try to simulate in the world of like the power levels of different things. So it's basically just a patch fix. It's like it patches a lot of the things in the rulebooks that are scuffed in English and fixes it in German. I knew we had this example because one of our players was like, I played this cool gangster woman who's like all standoffish, being a tomboy, who's always cooler than everybody else, who's also like a magical adept combat person with the spirit of the wolf on her side. And she uses those combat boots, so she did every attack with like +5 damage. And I'm like, +5 for boots.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I looked. The German version says, okay, it's not +5 for damage, it's +2 damage against structures. Because the combat boots had like metal inside, something like that. So I see like my wife is screaming at me because I'm getting the story wrong, but that's her fault for not being in the YouTube chat and leaving me comments.
It's also the
you can add it to the Discord. I'll get it all.
What do you say? The principle is there, right? Everyone can remember a situation like this about Shadowrun, or similar things about design, about Edition Dungeons and Dragons, where you look and you go, wait a minute, the lead designers have a big thing. They have a whole video series on house rules that they use.
Yeah.
But you designed the game.
Yeah, but
why do you have house rules? That should just be the rules of the game. Surely,
and I'm sure,
right?
Yeah, and I'm sure Mr. Max would mention it as soon as possible. That's designed by committee, They use all of these house rules because they have to design by committee, and they're gonna be like, we can't put this in the book, or whatever.
Right. They have to
somebody who's not as good as you is going to complain, and that's why you can't make a good product.
And that's part of why I mentioned earlier that there are parts of Shadowrun that feel like they were just designed by one guy going, doing some mad science work on his own instead of a coherent design team that was working on one thing. And I would argue that you kind of need, when you're making an RPG, one guy to be in charge of many things. Just the way that you have one mechanic that is in charge of many things. You have your one core mechanic. You don't want... Occasionally you want somebody going, hey, I don't think this is working. You want some guy to edit things because, even if you're an editor yourself, you're probably going to skimp over something or, too many cooks spoil the stew, as Max says.
Yes.
And especially when you have, like, Kadola mentions, Catalyst Game Labs has some unique issues such as, well, you've hired a bunch of artists and then you didn't pay them. I'm not convinced that Shadowrun 6th edition was edited because it doesn't credit an editor. So either you just didn't hire one, or they were so embarrassed they didn't want to put their name on that project. There are some problems going on, which is a shame because there is a lot of good here that Max is right. There's not really a system that does what Shadowrun does well, I don't think.
That's a weird thing. Like there are no competitors in what Shadowrun tries to achieve. Like
Mhm.
now we got the Cyberpunk Red, the re-release, because they
Mhm.
had one like Cyberpunk Red 2020, which
Mm.
is like I think 40 years old at this point. I
Something like
know, like
that, yeah.
yeah, some
It was
people
the 80s,
still
right?
played
Yeah.
that like 5 years
Mm.
ago
Mhm.
because it's you have all of the retro vibes with that one. Hey, imagine a world where the smartphone was never invented, but we are in the future. That's that's cool because I mean
Yeah.
that's a cool vibe. To the
Yeah.
story about the boots, my wife wanted to correct me. It was a -5 like armor penetration on combat boots, right?
Ah, okay.
That's the
That's
English
still
version.
insane.
And yeah, yeah, like good armor, like if you have your normal combat vest or like whatever, like the Matrix overcoat, you have like 8 armor. So 5 is
Yeah.
just gone. But the
Yeah.
German version corrected it to be -5 armor penetration against barriers, so walls, doors, stuff like
Yeah.
that. It
That
doesn't
makes more
work.
sense. It's more what
Yeah,
they're for, either for door kicking and yeah, stuff like that.
and
That's
not just
cool, you
yeah,
know?
not ignore the combat vest with your boots.
Yeah, yeah. And you're kind of thinking like, well, it's a blunt instrument. How exactly is it penetrate? Anyways, and then
Yeah.
that's how you get into the 50-hour session where you're going, DM that you're just the mechanics are just screaming at your players, please
Yeah.
break character, ask out of character
Yes.
questions because the world doesn't make sense all of a sudden. And that's when crunch becomes clunk. When the crunch stops existing to make the world make more sense and it makes the world make less sense. And that's also
Yes.
like kind of the line where balance starts becoming a problem because the fact that things are unbalanced makes Shadowrun interesting. You're a small group of
Yes.
very skilled individuals, but the Corp has an endless supply of low to mid skill individuals, and eventually they'll start sending their A teams after you too. That imbalance is interesting. Using the element of surprise to counteract the fact that you are a small group of people, using the fact that you are untraceable to counteract the fact that, well, you can't access normal things because you don't have a SIN card, basically a social security
Yeah.
card, and everything's
You're
checking for
not in
this.
the
Yeah,
matrix, right? You're not clocked in.
yeah, that all's interesting.
You're not
Where
on
balance,
Facebook. You're
yeah,
not on
yeah,
Google.
yeah. Yeah, that's way more interesting than in a lot of games, where it's like, oh, well, you're a level 1 fighter, so you need to also fight against the orc that's a level 1 fighter, so it's a fair fight every time, and your combat just drags on forever, and your players are all on their phones. That's where imbalance becomes interesting. Imbalance just becomes stupid when it's things like that, where it's like, did the developers think when they assign that number to the thing? Or things like, well, hang on, my rigger has just made a drone which is as good at shooting as the Street
Yeah.
Sam is. Why don't we just send all the drones in first, blow everything up, and then if they die, all we lost was a bunch of money instead of me dying? And this is a conversation every Street Sam has with their rigger beforehand, and the rigger has to justify, like, well, you see, I
I'm
don't have a
just
good answer for this.
I'm just I'm just Neo in the chair, but
Yeah.
instead of learning kung fu, I'm downloading all of my regular PTSD that has been built up over a dozen play sessions. Not exactly. It was more like 8 play sessions. But what ends up
Yeah.
happening, the way you improve your characters, right? You buy
Mm.
guns, you buy cyberware, you buy like maybe you wanna have a better house to live
Mm.
in because you live in a shithole hovel for like
Right.
$200 a month. As all it does is not leak the rain in,
Yeah.
basically. And there's like all of these different ways to spend money, but if you're a magic user, a wizard, an adept, you're rich. You're a rich
Yeah.
motherfucker. Like
Yeah.
money comes in and you have nothing to spend it on because you live in harmony with your body and mind. Like this is crazy. And over here, you're being a rigger, wasting 20,000 million on building the coolest drone you can think of, putting all of these gadgets in, and then you send him into combat, and turns out some mooks are joining from behind, walk up to the drone because the drone is low and on wheels, shoot it a couple times, and it's destroyed. It's great at shooting, cannot tank anything for shit. Unless you like literally rigged in and you're prepared for all of the situations.
Mm-hmm.
The base drone stats to absorb damage is absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, pick up whatever you want from that. Money, drones, rigging. It's a mess. It's all semblance of balance or how it feels to play characters. Some feel great to play. The other ones are like, this is just a bookkeeping simulator.
Right.
And yeah, it's just painful because you never get enough money.
Mm-hmm. Or you're looking at things like, well, the that's too expensive for me to lose, so I'm never going to use it. So I have this really expensive cool thing that I'm never going to use. And then everyone else in the group is going, well, wait, the alternative is me walking in there and dying. So no, you have to lose a bunch of money by flying the drone in there and having it blow up because I don't want to die. And it's like, well, I guess that's fair. Money isn't worth your life. So I'll send that in, and then it doesn't get blown up. Everything goes great, which means the rigger just did everything. And now you're questioning, well, wait, because I was a self-preservationist, I just sat in the car all day and didn't actually do anything. Geez. But if I go out and do something, then I'm just attracting a bunch of attention. So the Street Sam sits in this weird spot where a lot of the times it's like, if they're getting to do much, things are going wrong. And yeah, it's confusing. I think I like in concept the idea of the rigger being able to, they're a driver, but they can also be kind of this jack of all, master of none. Although really, maybe it's more close to the original statement, the jack of all, master of one. They're master of driving, but they can get into scrap and combat if need be. They can do a little bit of hacking if they have to, and it's like, that's kind of cool.
And now I'm looking over here over my drones of my rigger because I designed him as he works for Dog Wagon,
Oh, cool.
So his rigging, he has specialized into driving high security dog wagon contracts of saving platinum members from whatever gang war zone they fell over dead in. So I'm a great driver. I'm a decent medic. I'm shit with guns, but I can shoot stuff with my rigging,
Right, so yeah.
And I'm a gnome because, man, I don't have a personality, so I choose being a gnome as being a personality. An even smaller dwarf. So we look at the classic GM Nissan Doberman, which is a medium drone on wheels, like on tracks, I think, even. Yes. It's a medium size, and it has a gun installed. And the gun is like the AK-79. Wait, 97. And that's all it does. So it cost me $8,000 for the drone. But the run gives me what? Between 3,000 and 5,000 million. Depending if you go by the book, if you GM like the book intends to. And what? The bonus money is like what, 20% most of the time? Or sometimes you tag in, or you might tag in secondary objectives that give like another 1,000 on top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question, like, is this 5,000 for the group or for one guy? So
right.
I lose my drone and we have to run away. So like if the drone doesn't move anymore, how do I get the drone out? somebody has to pick it up because the rigger cannot move a fucking drone with his body. It's now I lost 3,000 trying to do the job that I'm supposed to be good at using this expensive hardware, but the job does not support the investment. And that's a rigger specific issue because you can just lose equipment really fast.
Yeah, you end up burning through, and it becomes an incentive to keep doing jobs because you need the money, but it also can put you in a situation where it's like, oh, the first job went bad, and now I have no money, so I'm now less likely to succeed at the next job because I'm out of the things I need to succeed. So, yeah, it's a weird one, and I don't.
Yeah. It feels really bad for the player, right? Because usually there's a sense of progress. Everybody else gains more karma and more money. Like you shoot ammunition. Like your weapon doesn't really break as a street Sam. You can improve your hacking gear. Like you don't lose your deck unless something really bad happens. And our players say you only lose your deck if your GM is an asshole and wants to fuck you personally. But
it
the
can
rigger,
be like
it's everybody progresses and you regress instead. Sitting there like, please, GM, give me some cash or give me a drone to hack, like to steal, give me something, anything.
Right.
And every time you dig into the rules want to punish you for it.
Yeah. It's a tricky situation where they have to balance the reality of the world, where it's a gritty world that it's like, it is after you. You are by definition criminals. Even if you're the good guys, you're criminals, and a bunch of people are going to be after you.
You're a criminal just for existing.
Right. Even if you side with, one corporation, you end up in the black books on, oh, well, great, all the rest are after you now. So it's like there's you're kind of stuck in that situation where it's like, well, the world is trying to punish you. Is it fun or compelling for the gameplay mechanics to also punish you in that way? I would argue not necessarily, especially when it punishes one person over another, when it punishes, one character concept over the rest of them. And the ways that you can handle things like that are like what? You ask, you make the character less of a specialist. Well, now they're kind of in this weird, I'm not super great at this, I'm not super great at that. There ends up being things where I just cannot succeed because they have too much armor, or I can't succeed because, it's like, do I end up kind of good at knife fighting and I can take out some goons, but the moment, any real threat shows up, I'm totally useless? No, so I better decide to be a street Sam, right? If I want to be good at knife fighting, probably. But now that I'm a street Sam, well, okay, I don't really want to get into fights in the first place because then I'll ruin everything, I'll get loud, and then eyes will be on the decker who can't fight very well. So, we don't want to do that either. Yeah. Max says, "Punish me, gamey."
Punish me, gamey.
But yeah, it's both one of the more interesting things about the game and one of the more frustrating things about the game. And I think when you cut out some of the things that make it clunky, you can get through these parts easier, right? When you're not sitting through this. Street Sam isn't complaining as much about not doing anything in a session when you cut out the 3 marks thing, or the 3 mark situation. When you make it just one thing, well, now if the Street Sam spent 3 rounds just kind of dicking around, looking, making a perception check or something, looking for guard patterns, then he's like, oh, okay, whatever. Things went smoothly, and a pat on the back and drive away. Great. And then you hit him the next time.
You get the turns, the whole inflation problem. You can stay on top of
Right,
it.
right.
Everybody anchors their character or like interacts. Maybe they make a phone call, ask
Yeah,
like a couple questions. They're
yeah,
like, Google AI, how many restaurants are in the area? I don't know,
yeah,
something like that. So
yeah.
they make a
Or
call.
yeah, or with the
Yeah,
rigger thing, I like the little like wasp drones. I forget what they're called, but
yes.
that aren't that expensive. You're not gonna
Yeah,
get great feed
a
through it,
fly
but that's
spy.
something. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's something you could send up on the third floor of a building and be like, oh wow, you get fuzzy video feed of like this place is crawling with security, and then somebody smacks it with a fly swatter, and then it's like, ah shit. Well, I'm out. Well, Street Sam, you owe me 500 new yen, and I would avoid the third floor. And so,
Oh my god. You triggered me again because the fly spy is really funny because he has realistic features rating too. It looks like a fly.
yeah,
So you have
yeah,
two
yeah,
different things happening. First,
yeah,
the NPCs have to roll to see if they spot the fly. So
yeah,
that's one roll against the stealth. The second roll is he has to see if he realizes it's a drone and not a fly.
yeah,
So now the
yeah,
game master is fucking doing two different rolls every time he tries to see is it a fly and is it a drone, which is such a headache to keep track
yeah.
of. And like
And
that's yeah, going
the
by the
way I handle
rules.
it is I only have like there would only be maybe one guy who's even thinking about that. Everyone else is
Yes.
just going, the fly, annoying. I don't care if it's a weird robot or something. I don't get paid enough. I'm a wage slave. I just don't want this. I don't want this fly making my already terrible job more annoying.
Yeah,
Whereas the IT guy,
nobody
that's yeah,
yeah, and nobody wants to play perception check simulator, you know.
right, exactly. Every time you do one thing, the GM does five things, and then it's
Yeah.
yeah.
And he
So
does five
just
perception checks just to
right.
spot
So
you.
just cutting things down and making like, all right, each of these guys in the office on this floor has two perception because they're focused on work right now, but there's a lot
Yeah.
of them, so let's make it a four, sure. And then I'll just roll four for the whole office floor. And then
That
if
could
there
be
happens to be, yeah, if there
I'm
happens to
not
be, and that's
yeah, go ahead.
part of the problem is the game doesn't explain how you should adjudicate these situations. There's like no GM tool in the game.
Nope.
Like that, it's just you're just kind of left to fend for yourself, and you're thrown to the wolves as a GM. And I think that's the last issue I want to talk about before I have to go get dinner. But
Gotcha.
GMing the game, yeah,
GM tools. A couple
yeah,
things that I really like. You hop into the last page of the book, or like somewhere in there. You
yeah,
have a like A4 sheet. You have a one pager of how to make a run.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I might be able to open it up on the side, but so I'm gonna give the examples that's in the core rulebook. But I find this page really helpful, especially when I was a new GM, but even nowadays, because it's a quick reference point of what kind of a run is it? What's the objective of the run? Who's involved in the run? What's the twist of the run? It's a great formula to create a one shot or two shot, like just a mission that you can offer the players. And
hmm
that for me has been a very simple and strong tool so that not
yeah,
every run is just the same example every single time.
hmm yeah. It makes sure that things don't stay formulaic.
Yep.
But the main issue that is one of the game's strengths, which is you can go super complex and in depth with character creation. The game doesn't ever really tell you. You kind of have to find out by realizing that that's a huge mistake to do that for every goo. And they only give you like a tiny little box of like, oh, here's what like an average tree cop has, or here's what. There's no, if you're expecting a like an NPC compendium of stuff, well, you'll have to
Nope.
look elsewhere because it's just, yeah. And I get that on one hand, it would have been too much to include in the core book, but at the same time, what I would have liked, which helped me right at the end, right when, I ran the last few games of it, was just I don't need a character sheet for this guy. All he's going to do is make a perception check, and then if guns start going off, he's running. He's not engaging meaningfully in, he doesn't need a character sheet. He's not interacting with it. So it would have been nice to have, like, again, like you said, like one page of just very simple things like average, your average Joe wage slave in the office. He just
Oh yeah.
had these are some stats. He's probably like an average score is like a 3 on something or something like that, Just something to have shorthand rolls instead of you have to figure out as you're playing, okay, somebody who's kind of okay at something has like 4 or 5 dice in their pool. Somebody who's really good at something has like 7 plus, and then movement. And then now you've constructed, after playing 3 or 4 sessions, now you've got, sort of, okay, I know what's easy, I know what's difficult, I know what's impossible. They don't really set that for you. And they don't
All right.
really, you know.
I've set it up on the YouTube, so I threw it on the screen, the one pager for the people. You have like a meet location where the meet
Yeah.
happens. You have the employers, like, and you can roll the dice to help you randomize it. You can also just pick and choose. So very
Mm.
very classic, like build your run. 5 easy steps. Is it a megacorp? Is it a magical group? Is it a private individual? You got the job type, uh, which is like a delivery, data steal, misdirection. The MacGuffin, which it's weird. They just put it in there. They just say it's a MacGuffin. It's like the one thing you have to take that the whole run evolves around. The writer's trope. A prototype product, cutting edge technology research, magical object. And the last thing is like the twist. How do you mix it up when they actually get there? What's the twist they uncover once they're too deep to pull out,
Yeah.
And that's like a good template for the game master to think about how to structure a run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It gives you like all the 3 things you need. A goal, a group that's interested in seeing that goal achieved
Yeah.
outside of the player characters, obviously. And then, having a complication is always nice. Having something that, your employer didn't tell you about, either because they were trying to pull one over on you or because they just didn't know about it. I think, again, the thing it's missing, though, is the characters, the NPCs. When
Yes.
you try to run every NPC as if they're a player character, the game just grinds to a halt, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be run more that the player characters they are unusually skilled, they are really, really good at what they're doing. Your average Joes, there's 10 times as many people on the enemy, corp or hideout or whatever it is that's going on here.
Yeah.
Most of them just don't matter. They are like a static obstacle. The main issue that they present is that they have eyeballs and they can scream when something happens. Maybe there's one, it could literally, there's only one guy that is a real threat, a real issue. Um, you know, be it the head of the IT department is all cybered out, and he, once he notices something's gone down, well, he's going to start controlling a bunch of turrets on every floor and causing a real mayhem to happen. Or there is a Street Sam head of security who has a corp sanctioned super illegal, heavily restricted item that nobody on the player character side of things has, and he'll just start mowing you down with a minigun. Maybe those characters should have the character sheet on the GM
Yeah.
side of things, but everyone else, they just have a difficulty rating. They have 3 dice in whatever pool that they're rolling.
That
They have,
the, The easy part is, hey, you agree on an attribute level, then you agree on a skill level, like how many skill
Right.
points do they have and what's important, like shooting,
Hmm.
using the knives, whatever weapon or cyberware they have accessible. So, this is a level 4 hacker, so he has like 4 points
Hmm.
for hacking. He's not that good, but he can do it sometimes. It's so that part is easy, but as soon as you have to look into how the cyberware work, like let's give him all of this weird cyberware, let's give him a tuned out gun. Do I shoot a single bullet or salvo or different
Hmm.
bullet types? That's where you really go into the weeds. That you cannot just summon this up like from your fingertips. You have to have extensive rules knowledge already
Right.
beforehand from years of experience, or just reading the book a lot,
Right,
like a
exactly,
giga nerd of like,
Yeah.
yes, I've downloaded all the gun porn into my cerebrum.
Right.
I can just rile it off as we play the game.
Right, yeah. Yeah. And whereas it could have been, you could avoid so much headache if there was just a section that it's like, obviously, Joe down the street is not going to have armor piercing bullets in his gun. Joe down the
Yeah,
street probably isn't even going to have a gun.
yeah.
That sort
Gun?
of thing.
What
Or
gun?
here's a head of security. Yeah, the head of security is probably going to load a few mags of armor piercing because
Yes.
he knows what the average chummer is geared with. It could have been as simple as that. But instead, you're kind of left guessing, like, okay, so this is a 12R, so it's very hard to find, it's restricted, but this guy works for a corporation, so he would have access to that sort of thing, and you're like scratching your head, and just, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's where things get clunky.
There's
They
one tool
could, yeah. Yeah.
one tool that's in the book that helps with that is it's like a tier system, like level system of like the level 1 guy, level 2 guy, level 3 guy, level 4 guy,
Mhm.
of a ganger on the street, a local security guard, or like a paramilitary guard, all the way up to like this guy belongs to a SWAT team, or
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's level system helps as a what's it point, like as like a gauge of like how strong should he be.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you walk into somebody in the streets and he says like, hey, what way you walking, and realizes that you have like
Yeah.
some rich cyberware, he starts punking you. You can look that up as a quick guide reference, like, okay, I give him like 3 skill points in his weapon, and that's
Yeah.
all he has.
Yeah.
I don't know, Joe probably has a gun in Night City or Seattle,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, that's fair, Kadolo. But are they bringing is a worker for Burger King going to dare to bring a gun into the McDonald's that you're currently having your meat at? Oh, yeah, certainly not. They're not going to be caught dead with that. So
Right, you have the two different aspects of everybody's a wage slave trying to do a 9 to
yeah, yeah,
5, barely to
yeah.
survive, unable to pay their life insurance and all of that. And on the other end, you have fucking punks on the street, like, the system is letting us down. I walk around with a fucking Magnum in my underwear
Yeah,
if I have
yeah,
to. Or
yeah,
you buy the one-shot
yeah,
wonder from the what's it called? The vending machine, right? That's the
yeah,
Night
yeah.
City, the classic Cyberpunk 2077. You get one shot and then it's
Yeah,
useless.
that's true, Kato. He might bring a minigun if he's part of that. That's the duality. It's like I'm either
Yeah.
armed to the teeth or I'm carrying like maybe a taser or some stun knuckles or something. Yeah, something legal, something that if I do,
Yes.
if because I'm worried about getting stopped by the cops, I'm worried about getting stopped by CorpSec they because everything's so tight because of the Burger King hit squad that is out
Yes.
there. They're looking for the guy that's got a minigun in his arm. So you don't want to be the guy that gets caught with just a pistol. You want to be the
Yeah.
guy that gets caught with the fucking bazooka and it's like, all right, are you going to do something about it? I'll take you all out with me if you have something to say. So
Yeah,
that's
the
part of the
Mexican
fun.
standoff.
Yeah. Right, it's part of the fun it's also part of the like, okay, the normal people in this world, their heads down, they're just trying to get by. And when you orient things in that way, it's like, oh my gosh, well, we only need to bring up these crazy, crunchy rules when it actually matters, not, every 2 seconds going through. Yeah, and that's the main issue is if the game just told you, oh, by the way, geez, don't bother using all of this, it probably won't even end up mattering. So then you could get through to all of the interesting stuff that Shadowrun has to offer. So I guess I would say that that's generally my closing thoughts on Shadowrun. Yes, no. Shadowrun, yes, but cut half of the garbage out. Just like look through a lot of the stuff. Look at the biggest offenders like decking and the Matrix, and go right. We don't need to use this. Now, maybe if you're playing like a one-on-one game, some of the Matrix rules could be interesting. If the decker is the only player, sure, go crazy with it. But don't grind the whole game to a halt and make people wait 30 minutes for their turn for the sake of having more in-depth hacking even on the surface of it.
I would add to that, like, the question, hey, should you play Shadowrun or not, is to me a question of like, how much free time do you have,
Right.
Because you reach a point of everything sucks. You have to learn all the rules before you reach the point of, oh, now I know how to play it real quick at the table, and then you start discarding all of the rules that get in your way.
Right.
Because you played it a couple of times. You've seen it happen and you realize, oh, this is shit. The first time around, it's really hard to identify which to keep, which to let go of.
You're kind of like a construction worker trying to find out which of these beams you can knock out of the building and which of them is structural support. And it's only after you've spent like a week studying these blueprints where you go, why did the engineer put that there? Like, this house is gorgeous, but this living room could be twice the space it would be if you just knock this pillar out here.
It's even worse. It feels like you have to build 10 buildings before you realize how to use this construction tools. That's what it feels like playing Shadowrun 5th edition. And as far as I know, 6th edition and Anarchy didn't solve the core problem.
No, it's yes, exactly.
Go. What?
They're mentioning, like, don't worry about what everybody's carrying, Your runner probably already has stuff that's way better than what your average Joe's carrying anyways, and, you're not going to be hunting after the, this guy's carrying he already called his bank to have it canceled, and, they knew the guy was dead the moment he hit the floor, so if I use his cred chip, it's going to be, I don't even need to do any of that, right? It's just too much of a mess for what? 500 new yen?
Which is pretty awesome. 500 new yen goes a long way, depending on what level you're running. But man, the game master has to decide, like, how much do I want to destroy my players? Like,
is it worth the squeeze, right? And that's that's the thing, is it's like you have to choose your battles, not only in game, but you have to choose your battles as a GM as far as, is this pillar important? No, the answer is usually no. It isn't. It's not worth slowing the game down for it. But so hopefully, if you're interested in running Shadowrun, we gave you something concrete, which is ditch most of the Matrix. Most of that you can easily go, hacking is just a skill. Items just have ratings, and that's just what you're trying to roll against. There's no, no need for this mark nonsense.
And because it's about reaching a mastery level where you can disregard half of the rules, it's hard to move on from edition to edition, because I feel comfortable with 5th edition. I have I don't really want to touch 6th edition or Anarchy, because then I have to start the treadmill again. So that's also an issue that's not really
and that's
addressed in the systems.
That's an issue also with with a lot
Yeah.
of other games that are where you get into the edition wars and it's just like, well, I already learned all of this stuff. Why are you making me relearn the game? I already
Yeah.
this doesn't make any sense, you know?
I've done the
So,
hard part. Don't make me go through that
right.
again.
Right, exactly. So there's commentary out there about
Yeah.
your 1 D&Ds and your Shadowrun 6th edition and your Pathfinder 2nd editions out there where it's like, well, I've already had this for so long, so you know.
And you realize
But yeah,
they they don't include things that were in older edition because it just somebody didn't read the fucking rulebook back of the
yeah,
20-year
or
old.
there's a revolving door of talent
Yes.
and um hell even at, places like Obsidian, they brag about being the guys that made New Vegas, and you look and it's like there's only one employee here that was actually here on New Vegas. So
Oh,
this is a
oh,
whole
I
ship
see.
of Theseus. This is not
Yes.
like no, you
It's
can't
like
really make that
only
your
the rudder was around when New
right,
Vegas
yeah.
was built.
Right, and it's the same thing with um uh yeah, third was made by people who really like the game, and that's what you need. You need a group of people that understands what made the game good, and you need a
Yeah.
group of people that it's a tricky thing, game design with big teams and whatnot. Yeah.
It
Yes,
definitely
I am.
goes it definitely goes to the point of, man, you need a visionary of, man, I wanted to achieve this problem, like solve this problem with Shadowrun.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
like it points in that direction, but all of these extra rules get in the way. You shave those away and focus on specializing with one job, which is what like Blades in the Dark attempted to do. Hey, let's
Mhm.
just do heist simulator with roleplay, and to achieve good heists we retcon. That's like it's a
Mhm.
great idea and good as a game, like from a game design standpoint, we try to solve one problem. Let's make a good heist game. So if people want to do that, they buy Blades in the
Yeah.
Dark. It then turns out, well, it's really getting in the way of roleplay because you jump out of the scene all the time to retcon a new scene.
Yeah. Right.
All right, we can stop here.
Yeah.
Any last commentary?
Um, Not really. I think we covered a lot of it.
All
Basically,
right.
there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of bitching to be done about the game. It at times feels like the designers didn't play their own game to test these things. On the flip side, yeah, Kato Low mentioned dice pools are great. The core mechanic is great. The character creation is fantastic. But also, we could make the argument that, well, there are so many people out there that mention the problems with non-role playing, with bringing up memes in the middle of your
Yeah.
gameplay, but they don't change anything about their game. So it might not even be that they didn't playtest the game. It might be that they playtested it and shrugged their shoulders and went, send to the presses.
Yeah.
We'll handle it in post. And then it never did get handled in post.
The CGI
And
people after the fact will fix
they'll
everything.
touch that up.
They will
Yeah,
fix
yeah.
all of our problems, for
Right.
free, for minimum wage
Yeah.
slave labor, without
Yeah, yeah.
sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah. The Shadowrun was actually a documentary about Catalyst Game Labs, not a.
Right?
But yeah, so we could and ah, and I've play tested for Paizo and for Wizards of the Coast before and seen how some of the interior works, and yeah, the design by committee is a huge issue. The revolving door is a huge issue. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever truly know what the solution to those problems is, other than your group at your table is, for now, unfortunately, going to have to be game designers if you want to
Yeah.
find these games. Everything is going to be the fixer-upper house where you're going through and you're going, why did they build it like that? Well, I guess I'll have to learn some, basic carpentry so I can fix this shitty area here. And if you want to put in the work, that fixer-upper house can be great by the time you're done with it. Otherwise, yeah, you could just buy a house that just works for you to begin with, but you'll lose a lot of the charm. You'll lose a lot of um, things that make that, 80-year-old house that Jack built special.
Yeah, like flag will not fix. I assume means like a red flag.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, like I still think a lot of things is great about Shadowrun, but you
Mhm.
can absorb many of it by like watch old like Shadowrun style movies, watch Ghost in the
Mhm.
Shell,
Mhm.
watch The Matrix, right?
Mhm.
Watch Johnny Mnemonic. That's a banger right there.
Mhm.
This Alita Battle Angel.
Surprisingly good movie, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what I envision when I think Shadowrun. All of those elements come into
Yeah,
how I
yeah.
want to play, what kind of situations I want to get into. And like you also have stuff like Tron,
Yeah.
imagine if you could hack, but you envision it like racing in Tron to achieve what you want to achieve, like with
Yeah.
that visual in mind, racing through the Matrix with a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then there's
uh
a little bit of Gundam space magic mixed in,
yeah,
and a little bit of fantasy, and it's cool. It's its own thing.
it's cool.
Yeah.
It's unique.
But
That's why it's
yeah,
still around.
right. The old Victorian mansion is a great example, Kadolo, right? Wow, it's so gorgeous, and then you get inside and it's got an old asbestos boiler, and you're going, "Ooh, we're gonna have to rip that out, aren't we?" But if we
Yeah,
rip it out, oh, we're gonna have to. Are we gonna have to pay an asbestos disposal crew,
yeah,
or can I just throw that in the back and nobody will notice?
right.
Some of those things you can throw out. This metaphor is now stretched. Yes, it is space road.
You just ignore it until it shows its ugly head. Like, I got a
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
again. Oh no!
Yeah,
How did
yeah.
I not see that coming?
Right, right.
All right, with that, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna let you eat. Do you have
Yep.
any video topics you bringing up or videos that you're doing soon? I
Uh,
know.
you
So you
know,
do have
I
a channel.
yes, I do have a channel, and I'll mention this video. I'll probably just put a link to it in my thing. I hit 500 or 250 subscribers as soon as I got the flu and my state started catching on fire. I wanted to do like a because there's a lot of newcomers. I wanted to do like the shorthand of 4D roleplay, 3D roleplay that will fix so many of the common issues. I think that's going to be my next video, which is just, hey, if you don't move your player characters as the GM and you stop doing the you feel, you think, this sort of thing, wow, your games are going to start going by so much faster, or at
Yeah,
least they'll feel like they're going by so much faster because you're not having to do all the work. Now your players have to act to do things.
it's a great fun
So
multiplier.
yeah, like use if your goal, well, we're just having fun.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here's a way you can have even more of it. um, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that'll be a thing. I'll probably be preaching to the choir for a lot of you, but I did get a lot of subscribers recently from uh the odd video I did on Dungeons and Dragons, which I
Yeah.
don't do very
Yeah, man.
often.
Look, yeah, build it and they will come, as the saying
Oh,
goes.
and three more. We hit 253. I haven't made any videos, and we hit three more subscribers. So I
Nice.
must have done something right, and we'll yeah. So look forward to that, and then I don't know. I've got so many videos I want to make in the backlog, and I just haven't been thinking about it because I've been barely able to speak these past couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on that show with Max Liao
Oh, cool.
on the channel. Yeah, that's gonna be tomorrow.
Nice, nice.
And yeah, he sent me a DM with the topics a couple days ago. I think it's the Legion of Myth channel. So you
Mhm.
can watch me there tomorrow. And I just I've gotta hope to not to embarrass myself. I've been thinking about like, because I've waited basically 5 weeks to get in there, and the last week was just like, do I just quit because I'm not feeling being in the show for 4 hours, so waiting like the longest turns imaginable before it's my turn again to speak on a topic. It's like being in a bad D&D session. So, but hey, I said I want to do more YouTube videos, want to create more content. It's only logical to actually show up to some of these debate style, podcast style videos.
Right.
Yeah. And like I liked it in general. The last few ones that I've watched, I've enjoyed. So why not? Let's throw the hat in the ring, see how that goes. And if it's the worst experience ever, I can always be like, yeah, it's not for me.
Right. And at least you had the experience, right?
Yes. At least
like,
I get the participation sticker. You've done it.
And now you know that it was bad, right? Lots of things you don't know until you do try, so that's
right. It might be way better than expected, but
right, there you go.
Yeah, I gotta give it a. I gotta
might
give
win
it a
over
shot.
might win over some hearts and minds there.
Absolutely, or will do my best.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and there will be more content. Yeah. See you guys.
Yeah.